Good evening. Thanks for tuning into this West update on November 15th. This is the low pressure system. This is the California storm we were talking about all the way last week on Wednesday. There's been some build up to this coming into this week. There has been, the models have kind of catched onto the bit of a weakening here in the system. Now, looking at the satellite loop that we're looking at now, it doesn't look like the weakest storm. This is a reminder that we are in the water year here out west, certainly for California, but it's not quite as potent as I think we might have thought, maybe 7 days ago today, but still expecting a lot of rainfall in parts of California, certainly coastal California along the mountain ranges there, and still looking at some potential, measurable rainfall in the Central Valley, potentially up towards an inch. Can't rule out maybe more than that here, but really cool low pressure system kind of spinning just off the west, at least looking at it here on satellite. You kind of have the immediate center of the low pressure system here well offshore. But if you look out to the right or to the east of that, you have this big cloud shield and the rainfall embedded in that, and kind of two waves here. And that's going to be relevant for the forecast just here tonight on Wednesday night, but also a little bit into tomorrow morning. It's hard to see under the kind of high wispy cirrus clouds off in the kind of southeast or right bottom corner here, but there is quite a bit of rainfall now just moving into Southern California at the recording of this video here, 2 p.m. Pacific time. We have this another wave that has its sights set on really the Central California coastline. And this is also the wave tonight here, Wednesday p.m. It's going to try to push and curl into the Central Valley of California, probably bringing in a significant amount of the precipitation we're expecting out of this low pressure system for the Central Valley. Eventually, as we get out into Friday evening, the actual kind of proper low pressure system itself is going to swing into parts of California here and bring an extra round or an extra shot of rainfall to the coastal areas first, certainly, and then to the Central Valley, and potentially some snow to the Sierra Nevadas as well. We'll talk about all that here. We'll talk about a little bit of other changes we saw come into the forecast over the weekend as well. I want to jump out and get a picture of the radar loop here. Got to look away to the left side of the screen here. I'll zoom in on this. There is that rainfall I mentioned just a slide ago, pushing in underneath that big cirrus curtain over Southern California. But we can see some potent showers now starting to push into Southern California, including the Los Angeles area. Seeing some moderate to strong rainfall amounts already being observed here from some of these showers, expecting these to continue over the next hour or so with this kind of lead wave pushing into Southern California. And can't rule out some of this rainfall getting into the lower Colorado River here this evening and then tonight. Some of this likely evaporating as it comes over the mountains here, but expecting potentially some measurable precip in here Wednesday p.m. into early Thursday for parts of the lower Colorado River Valley, the Imperial County area, Yuma, Arizona, and that portion of the corridor there. And even see some showers trying to push into the Central Valley as well. Again, seeing a few rainfall observations out of these, certainly not widespread in terms of a lot of this making to the ground, but expecting that coverage to increase. Some of this is certainly going to get to the ground in Central Valley. I think when all is said and done, might be looking at anywhere from a half inch, maybe a little bit more, depending on where exactly we are in the valley. Switching over here, this is the forecast here from the ECMWF, the European model. Just want to get an idea of timing on the system. I'll make this forecast valid here as of Wednesday evening. And this is kind of a nice snapshot of where we are right now, just based on the radar image that I just showed you the slide before. So if we look down into Southern California, there's those spotty showers that I just showed you pushing into Southern California along the coastal communities there, all the way down through San Diego, up through the central part of the coastline here. That's that first wave, but remember there was that wave just to the west of that I showed you that hadn't quite made it on shore yet. That's the wave coming in here tonight, Wednesday evening. This one's expected to be pretty heavy in terms of rainfall in the immediate coastal areas. Talking about the Salinas Valley, down south through Oxnard, Santa Maria. Some of that heavy rain now pushing in overnight tonight around dinner time and then after sunset. And you can see that trying to get into the Central Valley with more modest rainfall amounts here overnight Thursday, or overnight Wednesday, I should say, into early Thursday morning. And then I'll take this forecast out through the day Thursday. Some spotty showers can't be rolled out in the Central Valley here Thursday morning, Thursday a.m., but expecting kind of a lull in the system. And this is why we expected or saw some of a weakening here. We thought the system would swing through a bit more potent and bring some more consistent rainfall Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But with this kind of lull and the coastal low being well off the coast here, it's not bringing as much precipitation as maybe we thought a few days ago, or at least before the weekend. Just some spotty showers through the day on Thursday, not too significant of precip amounts to the Central Valley. So take this through the day on Friday, you can see that low pressure system now creeping toward the coastline here, and that's going to bring another round of precipitation first to the coastal communities and the coastal mountain ranges, bring another round of precipitation there. And then as we go overnight into Friday night and then finally into Saturday, that low slowly coming on shore, weakening as it does so, bringing Central Valley precipitation chances back during the day on Saturday after Friday evening, kept a lot of that rainfall along the coastal areas. Now, if you look to the north, kind of as I've been looping through that, we actually have another wave coming through parts of the Pacific Northwest, really looking at that Saturday PM, so overnight Saturday, at least later in the day, bringing a shot of rainfall to the Willamette Valley of California, parts of western Washington. Good shot of rainfall here, not expecting anything too significant amounts in the Willamette Valley, looking anywhere from a 1/4 inch up to maybe 3/4 of an inch, depending on where exactly you are. And then that's swinging east through eastern Washington and parts of eastern Oregon as we go overnight on Saturday. When all is said and done, this is the total amount of precipitation forecast from the National Weather Service, the WPC here. This is all the way out to Sunday evening, just looking at all the rainfall totals here. Highest values out of this event certainly going to be in the central coastal areas of California and the mountain ranges there. Potential flooding concerns there, not as high or as significant as what we were worried about at the end of last week out of the same system. So that's a product of that kind of potency, the strength of the system trending down a bit. And also it just kind of stalling off the coast here at the end of the week and losing some of the vigor that it had come through more consistently. But rainfall all the way down through San Diego, potentially as much of an inch, depending on where exactly you are here. But looking at amounts over 1/2 inch, certainly up toward an inch or maybe even more in some of these mountainous communities. Can't rule out some crazier values, 3-4 inches plus in some of the mountain areas here of the central or southern coast. But expecting quite a bit of rainfall out of the system there. If you look just east of the coastal mountain ranges into the Central Valley, looking at amounts anywhere from a 1/4 inch all the way well to the bottom of the San Joaquin Valley. Still expecting measurable precip there, but not quite as much. As you move northward, potentially getting into 1/2 inch. And then maybe in the Sacramento, the Central Valley area, getting up potentially toward an inch of rainfall, depending on where those showers kind of set up and if they want to park over one area for just long enough to get them closer to an inch of rainfall. That's certainly a possibility there. If you look up to the north, the Willamette Valley of Oregon here, seeing amounts kind of in that 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch rain. Could see a little bit more of that when that system comes through Saturday night, but certainly not expecting anything too significant outside of the Cascades here. A little bit north of that, eastern Washington, getting some of that precip Saturday night, more later in the evening, pushing into the eastern part of the state. And what you're seeing here actually in the Golden Triangle of Montana, if I jump back to the forecast on the slide before, it's actually a shot of snowfall, rain turning over to snow here late tonight, Wednesday evening. Potentially a quick shot of an inch or two of snowfall overnight here. Basically a dusting, maybe a little bit more than that if we can get an inch or two on the ground here in the northern part of the Golden Triangle here. Can't rule out something all the way down to Great Falls as well in terms of snowfall. That's kind of the story with the storm system here, moving out, really kind of getting into Sunday of Monday of next week where it starts to clear out for the whole area if we include that next system coming through the Willamette Valley, when temperatures are expected to warm up getting into next week as well. Another opinion here, this is the ECMWF, so this is the forecast I was showing you to kind of get the timing of things. Well, this is their rainfall totals, and kind of as expected, a little bit less uniform than the National Weather Service's forecast for rainfall amounts. You can see getting into some higher values here along the coast, upwards of 4 inches of rainfall, and some spotty areas here in the Central Valley getting up an inch, maybe even a little bit more than that, kind of that Stockton to Sacramento area. So keeping an eye on that area, potentially overperforming a little bit in terms of the rainfall amount, what ends up in the bucket when all is said and done. But similar values here in the Willamette Valley, a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch. Similar values here in eastern Washington, a 1/4 of an inch up to 3/4 of an inch for parts of eastern Washington. Not terribly too significant of rainfall moving into the Snake River Valley from this event. Snowfall, the big story here is the Southern Sierras expected to get, I think, a good shot of snowfall here, potentially a foot, maybe even more in the Southern Sierras. The snowfall lines are going to be pretty high up, so 7,000, 8,000 feet, maybe even higher than that. So not expecting, a huge event, but given that we're here in early November, the start of the season, not a bad thing. I don't think we're going into an El Nino water year. We wanted to deliver certainly on the snowfall front in terms of getting that snowpack built up in the Sierra Nevadas. So we're starting that here. Certainly as we go through this event. The Central Sierra is not seeing quite as much snowfall out of this event. Just kind of a product of it weakening a little bit here earlier in the week. And then we can see some of the spotty amounts here in the parts of the Golden Triangle of Montana. As far as temperatures, we are looking at the National Weather Service, the NDFDs. This is their forecast for high temperatures. We'll take this out really through the next 6 days here. And the color shading is based on kind of the seasonal temperature for this time of year. So where we're warmer on this forecast, we're expecting warmer than average temperatures. Where we have those bluer colors, we're expecting colder than average temperatures. And this is for Wednesday here. We're pretty warm across the board, save for parts of the Pacific Northwest and then the parts of California, the coastal areas, and some of the mountainous areas that are under the coverage of the rain, and the clouds bring those temperatures just below average here. So we go through the day Thursday, we see that temperature drop a little bit in parts of Montana where that snowfall is coming through. Temperatures staying about seasonal across California, a little bit cooler under the clouds and the rainfall there as a result of that storm system coming in. Similar story Friday, relatively warm across the west, save for some of the parts underneath rainfall and clouds in California. Colder as we go through the day Saturday, and that's when that low pressure system is really going to swing on shore. We're expecting greater coverage in terms of the cloud and rainfall, again with that second shot on Saturday, perhaps some colder air moving in. Then we have that next system moving into the Pacific Northwest, and that's going to bring a cold front through this area here, keeping those high temperatures down just a bit here on Sunday. Not, a huge cold shot by any means, but a little bit cooler than what we're dealing with at the end of this week here. And then really the story going out into the next work week, I think, is this warm up that we're going to see. So Tuesday now, November 21st, really kind of warmer across the entire western region as we go into, I think, a warming up pattern here going out into next week. Something we talked about kind of all November all the way through October was the tendency for the MJO, that is the Madden Julian oscillation. It's what we track to kind of get an idea of when these storm systems, what kind of weather we're going to be seeing in the western U.S., where is that going to be going. We talked about kind of in the last few videos that as it's kind of stayed in phase 7 and phase 8 and even getting around to phase 1, moving through the Pacific Ocean, that tends to implement active weather, storm systems, cold fronts, generally more precipitation in the western U.S. And we've seen this propensity at times in October and November for the MJO to swing back through the Pacific Ocean, which it just did recently here, bringing what we think, or at least influencing this latest storm system that we're watching coming through California. And there's kind of this fork in the road that we reach every time we do this, and we're expected to reach it again here in mid-November, where it's coming through the Pacific Ocean here, going through the Western Hemisphere. And if the MJO makes a total round about the globe, really all the way around the equator, back into the Indian Ocean, well to the east of Africa, it's likely to give us a break in this kind of active pattern that we've seen, which really feels like we've been stuck in with these brief little breaks in between since October. And we're seeing that forecast now, at least from the ECMWF forecast of the MJO activity going out through the end of November, that perhaps we're seeing a really real restart of the MJO as we get into that kind of 3rd to 4th week of November. And that's likely bringing about what we think is this warmer pattern shift that I'm going to show you in the forecast here and what I kind of just alluded to in that last slide, looking at those National Weather Service high temperatures forecasted to finally start climbing next week. And that's coincidence with some drier weather we're expecting as well for the western U.S. So this forecast of the MJO activity wants to bring it all the way back around to the Indian Ocean. That I think finally gives the western U.S. a break from what has been system after system, whether it was the Pacific Northwest or now California here this week. And I'll just kind of show you what I mean here. Here's the upper level height pattern. We're looking well up into the atmosphere here at the trough here, situated just off the west coast of California. Well, that makes sense. This is valid as of this evening. That's the trough impacting California now. If I play this forward, you'll see that kind of stalled off the west coast there. We think that's helping to weaken some of the rainfall amounts a bit. That finally comes on shore Friday night into Saturday morning. That's when that kind of second round of precipitation comes through, pushes out of the area. You notice quickly by Monday, November 20th, I'll take this forecast into Tuesday afternoon. We go from under the influence of this big potent trough that just came on shore here this weekend. There's now a big upper level ridge. And we know those bring in warmer weather, likely to bring in some drier weather as well to the western U.S. So this is really factoring in influencing that warmer, drier temperature forecast for next week. And this is all the way out to Tuesday, November 22nd of next week. As I take that forecast through, potentially looking at the possibility of a light cold front coming through at the end of the week, Thursday into Friday. See this very weak trough trying to move through here. But if I take it into the weekend after that, we see the influence of that ridge return and potentially more of a warmer, drier pattern as we get all the way out into that kind of 3rd to 4th week of November here, likely coinciding with that MJO trying to restart back into the Indian Ocean. If it doubles back, if it wants to stay back into the Pacific Ocean again, and we see one of these retranches through kind of the western Pacific into the eastern Pacific again, this forecast likely to flip around back toward a more active precipitation, cold fronts moving through the western U.S. At least as it stands now, seeing something more on the lines of a warmer pattern throughout the next 7 to 10 days. Look at the Climate Prediction Center here. Because of that 6 to 10 day outlook now for the western U.S. shifting warmer. We just saw that ridge moving in next week. I think that's really the influence here. Colder for the eastern part of the country, at least east of the divide there. If you look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, this is November 23rd all the way out through the 29th. We see that warmer pattern sticking around. Not the same amount of probabilities here in terms of that warmer than average temperature. Certainly still on the warmer side here from the Climate Prediction Center. As far as precipitation, a bit on the drier side as well, not only in the 8 to 14 day outlook, but the 6 to 10 day outlook. Drier across much of the western region through November 21st through the 25th out into the next work week, save for parts of Montana. It's not uncommon that when we get this upper level ridge dominating over the western U.S., that we can actually get some upslope flow here in western Montana, bringing precipitation another way there. So it's not an uncommon pattern that we see here this time of year. And this is kind of this flip toward this warmer, drier pattern is something of a more recent flip. We kind of saw it this weekend come about in the models here. And it's really kind of goes back to something that I think we're going to watch a few times this winter. I'll introduce it now here kind of at the end of this video. I won't go too much into it, but it's something we call the Pacific North American oscillation. And I won't go too much into it, but we want to know about this. And what I want you all to know is that when this is negative, we tend to have more troughs, cooler weather, precipitation to talk about, things to talk about in terms of the weather in California and parts of the western U.S. And it's negative right now. And if I bring this down, it's going to be hard to see down here, but these are the dates and the times here. So through November 15th, 16th, and 17th, we have that low pressure system, the big trough I just showed you coming onshore in California. Well, certainly the PNA is going to be negative because we know when it's negative, we tend to have more troughs and interesting weather. But you can see going into this weekend, we quickly rebound into a positive PNA, that little dip here as that system comes through Saturday and Sunday through the Willamette Valley. But the models want to keep that positive at least out through the next work week. Now, as we go beyond that, there's quite a large spread in where that's going. That's why I said we're kind of have a fork in the road there, perhaps aligning with the MJO, whether it wants to restart in the Indian Ocean or whether it's going to come back through in the Pacific. And here we are on November 24th, talking about a whole other system coming through the western U.S. So right now things have shifted just onto the positive side, which is why that 8 to 14 day forecast from the Climate Prediction Center, I think, is sticking a little bit warmer and a little bit drier for the western U.S. And this is something of a pattern flip that we just saw recently here after the weekend, getting into this early week, where perhaps we're getting out of this kind of cooler and wetter pattern. No promises there, certainly whenever you're talking about kind of the 8 to 14 day or 15 day plus forecast, but it is a shift we've seen. And at least looking at this page here, we can actually see that shift here as I take these forecasts back in time to where we thought we'd go kind of at the end of November. Well, here we are forecasting the last 2 weeks of November, just a little bit ago. We had the PNA going well negative to kind of in the month of November here, and this was prompting some of our concerns that this active, wetter, kind of cooler pattern would stick around for a while. But as these forecasts updated through here the week, now we're shifting much more positive, not certainly well above that kind of zero line, but certainly on the more positive side here, suggesting the slighter, better chances of that warmer, drier pattern continuing. So that's something we'll keep an eye on. How might this affect the December forecast? Well, if we look out into the ECMWF, the extended forecast going all the way out from November 19th to December 19th for temperature anomalies, we've been looking, that has been consistently cooler for the western U.S., and that's still the case here. If we look at the ECMWF, a little bit cooler temperature anomalies here, but not as extreme as what we saw just a week or even a few days before that. So seeing perhaps a little bit of a walk back in that colder temperature forecast for the western U.S., including California, other areas including Arizona, Washington. It's still there, certainly just a bit on the cooler side, but maybe not quite as aggressive as it was. We saw some very aggressive wetter forecasts for that area too, kind of at that same time. Those have been walked back a bit, but still seeing some above average values here for parts of the coastal California and the Central Valley. Kind of juxtapose that with a much drier forecast here, November 19th, I should say, through December 20th for the Pacific Northwest. So keeping an eye on that as well. Not uncommon in an El Nino winter or an El Nino December to see a drier pattern here for this part of the country. Last but not least, did want to mention that we are back in the water year, certainly since October 1st, and we're starting to get into the time where we're starting to watch for snowfalls in some of these mountainous regions. Certainly the Sierra Nevada is included in that. This is looking at the Berkeley Sierra Snow Lab. This is just by Donner Pass, just kind of down the road from that. We're actually under average for the year here. That's not a concern at all. We're very early in the year. In fact, where we're at this year is this red line. Where we are, kind of that historical average is that dark blue line in the middle of the screen here with the various intervals around that. So we have plenty of a ways to go. In fact, if you kind of look at the slopes of this line, when we collect the most snowfall historically for the central Sierra Nevadas, and I'm going to include much California in that, depending on where the snow is falling, see kind of two less aggressive slopes here at the beginning and end of the year, but when we really get a lot of that snowfall, it's kind of, I would say, between January 1st and kind of March 15th. So that's kind of when we really deliver a lot of the snowfall in the parts of the Sierra Nevadas. And that's really where, if we want a big water year, we want a big snowfall year with a good healthy snowpack, when we're going to be watching for those storms to deliver on that snowfall here. So not a huge concern if we're running behind here, even all the way to December 15th. And I would even extend that to December 30th through the new year. It only takes a few big storms historically to make up for that in a big way. And we saw a little bit of that last year, where it was really just January and March, the miracle March, that gave us the huge record year in some locations. So we're back to watching this. We're back to talking about the P&A pattern and when the next trough and when the next snowstorm is coming. And then certainly this weekend, expecting a bit of snowfall in the southern Sierra Nevadas at the higher elevations. That's all I have for you all this evening. Thanks for watching.